2020, when the governor announced this group, I can remember people being pretty excited and really interested in what would happen. Of course, 2 years later, I think a lot of people have just kind of forgotten that this happened, and that you all have been working for 2 years on all of this. So catch us up. What did you discover over that 2-year period? And talk about these recommendations that you're making to the governor.
Well, it's not even been 2 years yet. It's been about a year and a half. So in that year and a half, we have 16 members who came from all over the state of Michigan, from a variety of backgrounds, former elected officials, former journalists. We have all kinds of people at the table. And what we wanted to do, of course, we could have had 100 different issues that we talked about, but we narrowed it down to 11. We have 4 committees: education, community safety and justice, business leadership, and health. So all of those are really incredibly important issues. There are, a million subset issues that we could have talked about, but we think that we got the right mix for our first report. Now comes the work of working with our legislators, working with stakeholders to, ensure that some of these recommendations at least get a conversation. I mean, the sad reality is some of these issues that we think are really important don't even get a conversation in our state capitol. So we want to leverage whatever influence that we have as leaders in the state of Michigan to at least have conversations happening.
Yeah, and of course we'll post links to your work on our webpage. But if you could pull out, a couple of things that you think are kind of highline suggestions for the governor, things that would make a huge difference if we could do them, what would they be?
Oh, okay. So that's, and I have to narrow those 11 down to a few, but I'm happy to do it. I think that one that we really thought about a lot, certainly in the wake of the George Floyd, murder, and he's just emblematic. He's just one of far too many people who saw their lives end because of violence on behalf of the police. So what we have called for with our Community Safety and Justice Committee is that there be a real deliberate effort to have the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards work with the Attorney General and with law enforcement to really do a deep dive into statistics. I mean, what we saw that happened in Grand Rapids recently. I know that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission has already kind of taken a look at, even before this happened, at complaints about the Grand Rapids Police Department. How do we use our voices to talk about the need to have to use data, because data, if you don't use data, is irrelevant. So use the data that we have, collect better data, and leverage it so that we have better policing in our community. So I think that's one that has a lot of impact. We have $10 billion that's coming to our state for infrastructure improvements, really trying to ensure that Black business owners participate. There are federal mandates that there has to be participation of disadvantaged business organizations. How is the state going to ensure that we see that participation, so that the tax dollars that we put into also come back to our business leaders here in the state of Michigan? And then, as a Black woman, I can say, and this is, it may sound trivial to some people, but the Crown Act, which was introduced by Representative Sarah Anthony to ensure that Black women are not discriminated against because of the texture of their hair, because they choose their hair in a way that's to wear their hair in a way that's culturally significant to them. That is something that many states, 12 states, I think right now we're at 12 states now across the country, have already taken action to ensure that there is not discrimination in educational settings or at the workplace, and Michigan has been reluctant to take that step. So those are just 3, but there are many proposals among the 11 that I think could really be powerful tools to help improve the lives of African Americans in our state.
Was there anything that you, in your work, and a lot of it was, of course, research into the many different ways that this gap shows up, was there anything you found that was surprising, or was this pretty much, as African Americans, I think we live with this stuff all the time. But was there anything that shocked you or surprised you?
Shock, I would say no.
Mhm.
You know, anytime you dig into statistics about how Black people are living anywhere in America, I think you will be disappointed is probably the best word to describe it. You know, I think that when we talk about how maybe health dollars are expended in our state, ensuring that we have um, you know, people of color who, particularly with mental health, we know that um, you know, there has been disparate treatment for mental health, for behavioral health problems in our state when African Americans have behavioral health challenges or crises, they end up in prison far too often. So, you know, when we looked at how we can be more strategic about ensuring that we're getting those services, I think that that was something that, um, you know, it continues to be disappointing that we are not getting. And I'm really happy to see that Governor Whitmer is trying to be very strategic about putting dollars in for mental health and being aware of the equity gaps that exist for that. But the fact that it took um, a pandemic and the resulting mental health crises that have emerged from that pandemic for state government to be responsive in a meaningful way is disappointing. But we're also really happy that there is movement in that direction, and we're very happy about that.
Yeah. Earlier, you mentioned the legislature and the need to have some legislative action around some of these proposals. That's always pretty tough here in Michigan right now. Give us a sense of whether you're hopeful that legislators are open to these ideas and whether they will actually do something.
I mean, obviously, that's always the big question, right? So I think that one of the proposals we have is supporting um, lifting the or having a cap on the APR that could be charged by payday lenders. Um, you know, we would love for the legislature to take action on this. We also know that it's very unlikely that they will, but there is a ballot proposal that will likely be on the ballot for Michiganders to decide. So we'll get involved on that front. And I think increasingly you're going to see people going, if the legislature will not take action on things that matter to our community, I think you're going to start seeing more ballot proposals. You're going to start seeing people really demanding. And so I think that's how we see our role to lift up these issues, to make, for example, we talked about one of our proposals is to ban no-knock warrants, and I'm happy to say that the City of Pontiac City Council passed a resolution in support of the legislation that has just been sitting there with no action, and they credit it to the Black Report. So those are the kind of that's the kind of movement that we want to see. We have a long way to go. We know that, you know, getting things through the legislature is a challenge. Will probably continue to be a challenge in the near future, but we want to be really innovative and aggressive and figure out other strategies if that approach doesn't work.